I think one reason why some women have a very difficult time with submitting to their husbands is because number one, poor decision making, right? Some people who are married to people they should not be married to. That's just the honest to God truth. If we're being very transparent, some women have a very difficult time submitting to their husbands because they should have never married that man in the first place. So I would have to say number one would be poor decision making.
Welcome back to Before You Do with Verlin. I am your favorite premarital coach and the auntie you didn't know you needed. Today we have Mrs. EB in the studio. Thank you for joining us. All right, today we are discussing every woman's favorite topic, the word we all love to hear, and that is submission. And we're going to get right into it. EB, in your opinion, why does the word submission put a bad taste in some women's mouth?
That's a great question, and it's not an easy answer. So I would have to say that one of the reasons why submission is such a hard or distasteful word for a lot of women is because it requires change, it requires accountability, and also the bending of your will. So I feel that submission can be broken down into four subcategories, and we can definitely get into why that would be a problem for a lot of women, for sure.
Okay, so you said four categories. Let's talk about your definition of submission.
Yeah, so I feel like submission is like the bending, the yielding or the acceptance of your will against someone else's, right? So you're bending your will or you're yielding your will to accommodate, to accept, or to receive someone else's will.
Okay. Okay, I hear you. I agree with that. And I also have another take on it because what I have found down through the years is sometimes, and again, this is based on my opinion, that we hear a word and we think of it in one way. I'll put it this way. When I think about submission, a couple of words come to mind, and that is cooperation, right? Sometimes I think we hear the word submission and we think that I don't have any say, I have no autonomy, like nothing I say matters. And it's like, well, no, submission is simply just cooperating, like not always giving pushback. If my husband has something and I may not agree with it, then we'll just go that route. It's sometimes that I have something going on or I have another way. And so I think that if you say you have four parts. I'm interested in hearing what these four parts are because again, I think it's just sometimes giving in, right? Sometimes it's just you
Yeah.
give in, he gives in, you give in. It's not always, I guess, to me, in my mind, deep and spooky like we make it. Okay, so what's your definition and how are you breaking this down?
Yeah, it's like what you said. So to yield, right? If you're at a traffic stop and the light is yellow, right? You're yielding. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go. It just means that you're going to wait your turn. So oftentimes, in my personal opinion, I feel that we have a hard time with things not being our way. You know what I mean? So when you're bending your will or you're yielding your will, that means, you know what? It's okay that today is not my way, or it doesn't have to be the way I say it needs to be or how I perceive it to be. So I think that's hard for a lot of people because bending your will means that you don't get to have your way. And that's hard for a lot of people. So I did say four subcategories, right? So I think there are four different ways you can submit. And just understanding too that a lot of times people struggle with authority and they don't want to, necessarily obey, and even obey or obedience is a naughty word for a lot of people as well. But, it comes from an extension of you being willing to humble yourself and step down a notch. Okay. So some of those subcategories that I mentioned would be broken down, more like there's a spiritual aspect, there's a natural aspect, there's a logical aspect. And so I would say number one for me from a spiritual aspect, I would say, you have to be able to submit yourself to the Lord Most High. If you are a spiritual person, if you believe that there's a higher power, I would say number one, can you submit to him? Then I would say there's submission in marriage. Then I would say there is just submission, mutual submission, just one to another. And then I would say there's also just like authoritative submission. So just like submitting to rules, laws, being obedient to the laws of the land. So yes, those are the four subcategories I would say.
And it's interesting because that segues right into my next thought. We do it all the time, right? When you think about it, we submit to a boss, right? And if you are a boss, you submit to your customers because if you do not, you will not have customers for long, right? If everything is just your way and you don't listen to your customers, you won't have them
Absolutely.
for long. Yeah, we submit to local authorities. That's why we don't run red lights. That's why we stop at the stop signs. We submit to the government.
Absolutely.
When they say pay them taxes, we pay the taxes. We don't say, well, you know what? I ain't feeling that today. This year, we're not going to do that. Society in general, they have social cues that we say, okay, don't do this, don't do this. Religious leaders, and so submission is not as, like I said, it's not as deep and spooky. It's not as hard as we think because we do it all the time unless you're just in your house by yourself every day. Other than that, when you step outside of that door, you are submitting to someone. But for some reason, it seems hard to do it at home with the husbands or the men that we intend to marry. And I'm not sure why that is, but it is. What's your take on that?
Mhm. Well, I would say we have to break that question down into parts, right? Because there's a difference between submitting to a husband and then submitting to a man who isn't your husband. So we
Hmm.
just start with those who are married. I think one reason why some women have a very difficult time with submitting to their husbands is because number one, poor decision making, right? Um, some people who are married to people they should not be married to. That's just the honest to God truth. Whether it's a woman who has been married for several years and she's committed to her covenant to the Lord, and that's why she's staying, whether she's staying for financial reasons, children, whatever her reason is for staying, if we're being very transparent, some women have a very difficult time submitting to their husbands because they should have never married that man in the first place. So I would have to say number one would be poor decision making. I think that some women who are married who have a very difficult time with submitting to their husbands, who may have the right husband. He may be walking the way he's supposed to be. He may be leading, providing, and protecting. But some women are just selfish. Some people have a very difficult time coming off of being self-centered and things being how they perceive, how they want, so on and so forth. And I would say, also too, just I think some women have a hard time submitting because you ever, gotten an email, like signed up for an email or an app, and they have this disclosure at the bottom and it says, please read and I accept and I agree. I think a lot of women they have not thoroughly vetted the man that they are trying to be with. And they went ahead and they signed that disclosure, right? But they didn't read him properly. They didn't look into his character, look into how he handles conflict, look into how he handles his enemies. They didn't look into all those things. They didn't read the disclosures. So now, they done signed up and agreed to the terms and conditions and they didn't even know what they signed up for. So I would say for the married women that those would be some of the reasons why they have a very hard time submitting. For those who are unmarried, I would say, and I'm sorry, actually, let me go back one more thing. There's two things I forgot too, as well, with the married woman who has a hard time submitting. I feel that also, unforgiveness plays a major role in being able to submit because, we know that men struggle with ego and they struggle with pride and they make, not so many good decisions as well. Sometimes I feel like the wife has a hard time forgiving him for the things that he's done that has hurt her. And that unforgiveness within itself prohibits her from being able to submit to his authority. and then unmet expectations. So that unmet expectations lead to disappointment because you have in your mind what you perceive things should be. That's your expectation. And when that person does not live up to your expectations, now you're disappointed. Now you don't want to hear what they have to say. Now you don't want to be involved. You don't want to put forth the effort or the work because you're not who I married. You're not the same the man that I married. But the thing about it is that we all change. And I think that women who are stuck in unforgiveness and who don't hold themselves accountable to their own decision making and choosing people find themselves oftentimes unsubmissive because these are this is the environment that now has been created. So that's for the married woman. And then if you want me to, I
Okay.
could tap into the unmarried woman unless you want to speak on that.
When I say unmarried, I'm saying those who are on their way to being married, not
Two
just
men.
a
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend or what a living, but somebody who's actually you're saying, okay, we're going to be married and cannot submit to you. So yeah, you can go ahead and tap into that.
I I think I would think that's the biggest question to start with, right? Because we have a lot of women who are seeking marriage, right, with no standard. So I want to be married, I want to have a husband, but if you can't see yourself committing to this man or submitting to this man now and you're not married, there's no way that that's gonna work. Like, how can you expect to submit to a man that has not made a full commitment to you and you to him if you can't do that now? Oftentimes, people think marriage is gonna change things, but it does, but it doesn't. You have to put the work in prior to and not put yourself in a position, in my personal opinion, to again unmet expectations, right? Because I thought that if we got married, I expected that when we got married, you were going to do this and you were going to do that, but he
Mhm.
wasn't doing it then. You know what I mean? So I would say definitely, if you can't submit to a man now and you're not married, you should not marry him. You should be able to see not only his potential but see his progress. So if he's not actively progressing and you're working towards that commitment, then I would not subject myself to that because as a wife, you have to follow. You have to be able to, listen to him and, take his advice and do the things that he's recommending you to do. And if you don't feel like you can do that now, you're going to really struggle later. So, yeah.
This is so true. And to on either if you're on your way to being married or married, another issue that I think is very common, and I know I had this issue when you grow up and you don't have both parents and you grow up with I mean, my parents were married, but they were separated when I was about 5, and so I did not see that in my home. I did not see how that worked. My mother made all the decisions, she worked, she did everything, and so it was definitely a learning curve. I saw it coming up in different families a little bit, but I didn't live with anybody. I only lived with my mother, and so when you are contemplating getting married, and if you have been raised by a single mother, then that is something submission is something you have to work on ahead of times. We're always evolving and getting
Absolutely.
better, but if you don't know what it looks like, if you did not submit to a father who told you, okay, if you're going out, you need to be back at this time, you need to do these chores or whatever, and you didn't see your mom submitting to a man and what that looked like, even that type of partnership, it's going to be pretty difficult. So if you don't know what it looks like, you need to get yourself a mentor. You need to watch podcasts like these. Again, get yourself a mentor of someone who has been submitting and happily married. Watch podcasts. Do whatever you need to do because it's hard to do something that you haven't seen demonstrated. And that is really important. If you
Absolutely.
did not have yeah, if you didn't have a father in the home and you did not see how that works, then you got the idea, ain't no man gonna tell me what to do because you didn't see it. You
Mhm.
weren't used to it. And so I just want to throw that in there. EB,
And I
tell
wanna
us
say
about
too
yourself.
that
Okay, go ahead.
oh, no, I wanted to say too to that point because that's such a beautiful, perspective because a lot of times the childhood trauma also prevents us from being able to move forward in relationships. And there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. But developing a standard is so very important because that's your rubric or your model or your form of measurement. And a lot of women don't have a standard at all. And I feel that if you are a Bible believer, then seek the Lord because he has already given us several standards to follow by which we can test the spirit by the spirit and know what his will is for our lives according to what he's already told us. So for those who don't know where to go or don't know what direction to move, first move to him because he's going to give you all the direction that you need and he's going to protect you and keep you covered. So I would definitely say that too because I know a lot of people didn't they not only did they not grow up in a household where they saw a viable marriage or a viable relationship of a man and a woman, a lot of people have grown up in environments where they don't have hope. They don't know how to seek out those things that are necessary to get them to the next level. So, for those who are interested in finding those things, I would just say definitely seek the Lord for sure.
Okay.
And about me.
All right.
Okay.
That's right. Tell us about you, who you are.
So, my name is EB. I'm just an everyday person. I'm a mother of three and a bonus daughter I have as well. I am a business owner, a small business owner, and I'm also a farmer. So, I like to work.
Nothing wrong with a
And
little
I'm
work,
also a
right?
wife as well.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so being a wife, right? Because people always say, do this, do that. I'm a big question, like, how do you do this? Don't just tell me, oh, start a business. Tell me, where do I need to go? How do I sign up? So tell us, EB, how does submission play out in real time? Like, how do you walk that out for somebody who's never heard the word? Go ahead, spill the tea.
Okay. So I have to be true to my belief system and I have to speak from what I would do. I know things are very circumstantial and everybody moves a little bit different, but I just want to like break down some things for people to understand my mindset. The first thing that I do is I go to the word because I believe that faith comes by hearing and hearing the word. So I always have to, put that first because I don't ever want it to come across that the things that I have obtained or the things that, I've learned or the knowledge that I have is from me. I know that it's been because I've sought him out through the word and I get direction from there. So for me, number one would be to spiritually implant yourself in a position where you can learn and grow on a spiritual level. So that's number one. Now, as far as the actual physicality of it, like how do I submit to a person in real time? Introspection for me is a very big thing. I have to oftentimes when I don't want to do something, I have to ask myself why I don't want to do it. Why is this such a hard issue for me? And when things anger me and I have to do things that I don't want to do that cause me to have anger, I always have to look at myself and do some introspection because anger is a tool designed to tell you what's wrong with you because you're the one who has the issue. So if you're angry, you have to determine why you're angry. So I would say introspection, like, why am I having a hard time listening to him? Why am I having a hard time doing this thing? Is it because I'm being selfish? Is it because I'm just being resistant? Or is there a deeper issue that maybe, we need to discuss and find some compromise on? So,
Okay. I know for me, how it plays out is typically we have an issue. It could be involving money, it could be involving something with the children, whether we're going to put them in a program or something like that. And we have opposing opinions. Okay. It could be something as simple as buying another form of transportation. Maybe I want something, I want a new truck. And so we have a conversation. My husband's like, we don't want to do that right now. And I'm like, but I really want a truck. This truck is this, and I have all of these points that I'm laying out. And we may go back and forth and try to negotiate. But at the end of the day, right, about this getting a new truck, my husband will say one thing or the other. Okay, well, let's go work this out, see how we can do it. Or he'll say, well, you know what, right now is not a good time. So it's gonna be a no on that. Okay, and so me submitting and cooperating is not kicking and screaming, throwing stuff, upset because I gotta have this new truck, but it's simply, again, all right, I'm giving in. We're not gonna get a truck right
Mhm.
now. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna still keep driving. I'm gonna be okay. And so when we have these issues or these disagreements, it can't go both ways. You can't get a truck and not get a truck, right? It has to be one or the
Mhm.
other. And so we present the facts and then we sit down and we go through it. And then at the end of the day, my husband is the one who gives the yes or the no. Now, there have been times when we go back and forth about something, especially with the children, and my husband will say, well, you know what? You're right. We're going to do it this way. And so it's not always one way, but that's how it plays out. It can't be a yes and a no. It can be a wait or maybe not right now, but there's always a final decision that needs to be made. And most of the time in my home, that final decision is made by my husband. I don't always agree, but
Mhm.
what submission looks like, I may disagree and I may really disagree, right? And just think that it's not the best idea. But at that point, I know, okay, now it's time to pray. Even if it's not the best decision, the
Mhm.
intention is that whatever it is going to work out for our
For
family.
your
And
good.
so,
Yeah.
right. So even if I feel like, okay, I disagree, I don't think that's the right time, the right idea, I'm not going to
Mhm.
buck and I'm not going to say, well, watch what happens. You didn't listen to what I said, the neck roll and the eye. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, you know what? Okay, we're going to do this or we're not going to do it. But then I'm going to pray and ask that whatever it is, that it will work out for our good because it's not an issue of I want to be right all the time. It's what is right for our family. And I think that's what we have to remember, that submission is not about a fight against who's going to win and who's wrong or who's right. It's about
Mhm.
cooperating, being on one accord so that when we do pray, that our prayers are answered. And so yeah, that's my take on it, on how
I
we
think
walk
that's
it out.
yes, I think that's so beautiful, and it just hearing that, it's just a reminder to me in my own marriage and in my own walk because you said, "When I've done all that I can do," right? I've argued my case. We've come to a conclusion, but at the end of the day, he's gonna have the final say. And if I don't get my way, I just pray, right? And I think that's beautiful because we have to have faith that the Most High will move on our behalf. Sometimes we won't be able to get through to our husbands, but we have power and access to Him that He can turn His heart, that He can allow Him to see. And you don't have to tell your husband that he was wrong because the reality is that, sometimes people only learn by being wrong. So sometimes if you're right and your husband is wrong, let him be wrong because you always know when you're wrong. Even when you don't admit to it, even when you don't say, Tag, I was wrong. You can feel it on the inside. You know, when the truth will always remain true. And so when that truth comes out that you were wrong, whether it's you or your husband, there'll be a level of conviction. You'll feel it. You're like, dang, I should have listened. He did tell me not to try to move that or so on and so forth. So I think that's such a beautiful point. And I think what that does is when you step back and you release, because it's a tug of war, you're trying to make something happen. And I think when we release, they say cliche, let go and let God. But when we really do that and give him an opportunity to operate, then we can see him move in the lives of our husbands. We see change in ourselves. Our faith is increased because our prayers become answered, and we don't hinder our prayers because we're not trying to be God. And trust that he'll work it out, and trust that even if we don't get our way, that, like you said, all things work together for good, that it's gonna work together for us. So, yeah, I think that's a beautiful point.
And I want to say this because it's easy to sit here and say it, right? But my husband and I are both very strong-willed. I mean, extremely strong-willed, and I'm an only child, and so, negotiating is something I had to learn as an adult because I did not have siblings.
Mhm,
I didn't have to share. I didn't have to, do all these things that siblings have to do. I didn't have to consider anybody else, I just did what I did as
mhm,
an only child, and so my husband coming from a family of 10, he was on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so we're two opposites, right? And both strong willed and having to come together. Again, submission is when two strong wills come together and you have to come to a place where somebody gives in. And for me,
mhm,
that was difficult because I am an only child and I wasn't used to giving in. I mean, not in my home, at school, and like I said, you had to follow rules and all of that. But in relationships, because I didn't grow up around a lot of people in my home, it was just me and my mom. My mom was my mom. I didn't negotiate with her. She said whatever and I did it. And here's the thing, when you really think about it, ladies, most of the time you get your way. I say what the
mhm.
heat's on. I say where all the furniture goes. I arrange the kitchen. I picked out the car. I pick out the paint, right? I mean, really, when you think about it,
Yeah.
when you the lady of the home, right? Most of the time my husband is big on trying to please me. And so really, he's submitting to me all the time. I say, "Okay, I want to be on the outside. I don't wanna sleep on the bed by the door." Like, all of these things that we
Mhm.
do regular life, where we're gonna eat, I pick out where we're going to eat. All of these things, so it's not like we just have no autonomy and we're in this relationship and we never get our way, and maybe that's the issue that we always get our way, and so when it's time to hear the word, "No," or "We can't do that right now,"
No.
whatever,
Mhm.
we're like, "What? What do you mean?" So, but yeah,
Go
I
me?
mean, just give the man a break, right? I mean, give him a break. He does almost everything you want. What are we going to eat? Where are we going to go on a date? I mean, everything. Give the man a break.
Mhm.
All right,
That's
EB,
beautiful. Mhm.
what do you say to the woman? She says, well, and you kind of answer this, but this is more direct. She can't submit because she feels her husband is wrong.
I think in general, nobody wants to be wrong, right? But more specifically, especially not a man. Because see, men, they have a whole nother level of issues that they're dealing with that women oftentimes don't understand. But a single mother might. Why? Because a single mother has to be the provider, the single mother has to be the protector, the single mother has to do it all. So every single mother should understand the pressure to a small degree of what a man has to go through because it's not easy protecting people. Sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. Sometimes it's not even the outside world that's the issue. It's just you. You are the issue. Men have to provide. Providing is a very difficult thing to do, especially in today's economy, because you got to work 3 times as much just to be able to pay for things that you had to pay for a year ago. They're double and triple the cost. So protecting and providing is no small thing. So I think that a level of understanding has to come into play. We oftentimes don't try to gain understanding because we want to be understood. But understand when you're not feeling like you're being heard or you're not feeling like you want to submit to that person, also put yourself in their shoes because what are they asking you to do really? Is it really that difficult for you to bend your will, or is it really that difficult for you to go without whatever you're trying to prove or accomplish? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really coming from a selfish place. Like you said, just us wanting our way or not being able to accept no or rejection. It's okay sometimes to not have things the way that you want them to be and let them play out. It's another thing that you said about like being together and being on one accord. Sometimes as a follower, you have to lead, right? So you are following your husband, but you lead him through your love. You lead him through showing him, like, okay, I'm willing to hear you out, or okay, I'm willing to bend my will. Now, can you do it for me? Sometimes the following is not always not having it your way. Sometimes following is leading by example, by showing what you want, by doing what you want, in my personal opinion. And it helps me because like you also in my marriage, my husband also has a very strong will. Like this picture right here, this I did not want this picture in the house. You see this? No. This is me bending my will because at the end of the day, you know what? It's his house too. You can't control everything. So if this is going to make him happy and feel like he has a part in decorating this house too, there you go. You know,
Let them have it. Let them
let
have
him
it.
have it.
I bet you
Because,
picked out everything
oftentimes,
else. I said, "I bet you picked out
you know,
everything else."
you know? Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you. Everything doesn't have to be a battle. And my husband and I, we can battle sometimes. I mean, we can go back and forth, and sometimes it's just all about hearing the heart of the matter. And that's what I have learned and what I'm also learning to do, because at the end of the day also, you change. You've been married for quite a long time. You're not the same Verlin you were 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So you have to be adaptable and understanding, in my personal opinion.
You're spot on. And this is something I think about, or I just thought about, and I get it because I think we all have said, but this is just wrong. He's just wrong. However, if you work outside of the home, right, and you work for a boss, you cannot tell me that your boss is always right. But when your boss says, get some coffee, you got an hour for lunch, be here at 9 o'clock, work overtime, you do it, right? Why? Because he's a
Mhm.
boss, because you want that paycheck. But most importantly, you do it because you respect that boss, because you know he signs your paycheck. And so if you
Mhm.
can respect that boss who is wrong, you say, I know he's wrong. He might be doing all manner of things. You don't know. He may be wrong in whatever the decision he's making, but because he's the boss, you're going to do it. Well, if you can do that at the workplace with the man you don't even love, you might not even like him, right? He might not even like you. He certainly doesn't care. He's hiring you to do a job, to build his business, and you're doing that. So if you can do that for the boss man, you can submit and you can respect. It shouldn't be a problem in your own home with the man you love, who you are building a life together and possibly raising children. So, if you put it in that perspective, do you submit to your boss or do you curse him out? Do you tell him how you feel? Do you tell him, no, I'm not doing that? I'm just saying.
And I agree, and 100%. I agree 100% because respect is the ultimate currency. And there is a fruit that respect yields for both parties. Respect yields growth, spiritual growth, natural growth. Respect yields motivation, because when someone sees that you have respect for them, they're motivated to have respect for you. And it fosters an environment where each person feels valued. So I do believe that women definitely in their relationships and in their marriages need love more than they need respect. But I think that both parties need respect, because respect shows that I will maintain these boundaries. You're not going, like you said with your boss. You're not gonna tell your boss certain things because there's a boundary, and that boundary prohibits you from going past the limit or from doing things that are going to cause more detriment to the situation. So I think that what happens is in marriages and in even relationships with friends and family, you start to lower these boundaries and you start losing respect and thinking you can say and do anything because you feel like that person is always going to be there. And I don't think you should abuse the love and the level of vulnerability you can have in your marriage to say and do whatever. And because it doesn't yield peace. People are constantly willing to throw in their vows, well, to have and to hold, you're supposed to love and cherish me in the good and in the bad, but that doesn't give you the authority to be bad. You have to try to not be bad. You have to try to do all that you can do to show that person that you're here for them and you want to create an environment for them that's acceptable as well.
Mhm. Okay, so with that being said, is there a time that a wife should not submit to her husband?
Absolutely. I mean, the times that a wife should not submit to her husband is if he's putting her in a position or trying to convince or have her do something that's going to be in the detriment of herself or someone else, like their safety. Like you'll
Mhm.
see, you watch the first 48, you'll see that they'll have this girl in the interrogation room and she was with a man that she shouldn't have been with and she did things for him and now she's going to jail too. So of course, no. Like you don't have to submit to that. Anything that's going to be contrary to the word of God, anything that's going to be contrary to health or life, no, but most of the time that's not the case. We just don't submit because of, like I said, selfishness.
Mhm. So what do you think are some of the repercussions when women don't submit to their husbands?
Um, I think that you can stunt the growth, your personal growth. You can stunt his growth because sometimes you submitting gives him what he needs to have to feel like a man. Men are very, very sensitive. They're like babies sometimes. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. And I mean no disrespect to the man, but they are very sensitive. So sometimes just not feeling like they have that level of respect and support won't motivate them to make the changes that you really want them to make. So I feel like not submitting will hinder progress and growth in your marriage. It will hinder your relationship with the Lord because I feel that He has called us to submit to one another and to submit to them in a special way. So I feel that that's going to hinder your blessings and the things that you could possibly receive, you may never see because sometimes the change you want to see, it starts with you. You have to be the change that you want to see sometimes.
Mhm.
So I think that not submitting is a big detriment, and even if you just think about the laws of the land, not submitting, the laws are set in place for a reason, right? You go past 65, 75 in a certain area, you don't have enough time to stop. There's a collision. We got catastrophe. So, not submitting could lead to a catastrophe. So I think that it's really important to submit.
Yeah. And one thing that I definitely believe when you have this going back and forth and your husband wants to make a decision and you're like, no, no, we're not going to do that. And let's say he gives in, right? And one of two things will happen. Either he's going to constantly be thinking about this thing and deep down wanting to do it. And then that is going
Mhm.
to present resentment. All right. Because he will resent you. Why? Because when he wanted to do a particular thing, you refused. And so now he's sitting and he's resentful. Or if it's something that you pushed him to do that he didn't want to do, eventually it's going to stop. There's a saying, a man persuaded against his will is of the same opinion still. So that means even if he does it again, he's going to resent you or he's going to go back to whatever it is. And so when we are not thinking about the whole picture, not just me. or not just him, but the whole picture of our marriage and how this is going to play out, then yeah, you set yourself up for resentment. You set yourself up for I told you so, maybe even a missed opportunity. And I believe you hit upon it earlier. It's always a learning or a lesson. Okay, so even if this particular thing wasn't done, it could be a lesson that was missed because he was not in a position to do the thing he wanted to do because you gave so much pushback. And so then, yeah, that stunts the growth. In addition, when you come together and this thing is still in the middle, you don't have peace. To me, that's huge. When you don't have peace in your home, and that's not to say, well, every time I don't get my way, I'm going to, break the peace, but it's saying for men, because they are the leader. Some people may disagree, but
Mhm.
they are the ones who make the decisions in terms of the safety. I may do everything at home. How's my house going to look? All of that. But in terms of the provision and the protection, if you want the provision and you want the protection, it comes with a price. Sometimes we just want what we want, but we don't want to
Mhm.
pay the price. But it doesn't work like that. If I want my husband to provide and protect our family, then that means I need to come under submission. Again, it doesn't mean you lose all autonomy, but we have to put things in perspective. Everything is give and take. All right. If I hear something in the middle of the night, I'm going to say, hey, can you go check that? I'm not looking for him to say, well, why don't you check it? Right. that's that's how it
Mhm.
goes. He's the protector. I'm expecting him to get up and go see what it is. And so if I've been battling him all day about everything he wanted to say or do, how is he gonna feel like, "Okay, let me go protect her?" You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
gotta work this thing. We have to work it. And submission, although it's a bad word to some women, guess what? If you don't have the protection and if you don't have the provision, then you better check, "Let me see if I'm submitted. Am I even in a position where I wanna see what this looks like?" I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I agree because back to peace. You cannot have peace without agreement. And when I
Mm,
say peace without agreement, I don't necessarily mean that you take that person's perspective, but if you look at a treaty or you look at a global conflict, you only have peace if they can come together with an agreement. Even our government. I mean, the
mhm.
we had so much disorder October through December because they could not agree, and that created instability, and it did not foster a country of peace. So agreement is essential to having peace in your marriage. And how can two walk unless they agree? We have to find that common ground. And I agree with everything that you're saying because it really just boils down to you being able to make decisions in yourself. That's why I don't recommend women rushing into a marriage or rushing into relationships where they have not first examined the true character of this man to determine if he's going to be a true provider and protector. Because some women are expecting a man to provide and protect who never could do that from the start. And not to say that he couldn't do it, it's just to say he was already not doing it. So I mean, I agree with you on everything that you're saying. And I think that, you have to have a standard. The reason why I always come back to like biblical aspects, because even if you're an atheist or a non-believer, the biblical principles are both practical and they're logical. And I believe that this is what he wants us to do. So for me, it's easy for me to go to the word of God. We pray for a husband, we pray for all these things, and then he gives it to us and we don't do what we're supposed to do. And not to ramble, but a lot of times we don't know what to do because we don't take the time to seek it out.
Well, I'll tell you what, I
But
was gonna ask you about 2 points, but I think you already made them. Your 2 points.
okay, okay,
Now, if you wanna sum up a point, and we're going to get ready and close this out for sure, then you may
okay.
do so now. If women are listening, and you're saying,
Mm,
"It's one thing I want you to remember out of everything I've said today," what would that be?
um, if you are listening and by way you stumbled upon this podcast and this conversation, I want you to know that the Lord loves you and that nothing is by chance or by coincidence, and that He has a way of using people and using things to draw your attention, for him to draw closer to you, and he's looking to draw closer to you as well. And I want you to know that, no matter what you're going through, whether you're in a marriage, whether you're seeking to be married, whether you're dealing with some strongholds, some soul ties, whether you're dealing with a relationship that you want to be in, but you're not sure if you need to be in it, there is an answer. We talked about that owner's manual that gives you that warning, that gives you that instruction. I just want to encourage you to pray and ask the Lord to show you his will, show you his way. I believe with all my heart that there is no problem where there isn't a solution. And I just want you to take from the conversation that there is a way to solve your problems. And then the second thing is, obedience. For those who are, walking a little bit more progressively and do know a little bit more, just obey. Just do what you know to do. Oftentimes we already know what we should do, what we're supposed to do. Even a child knows what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. And we just have to do it. Make yourself do what needs to be done so that you can create the environment, manifest the environment that you want. You can create your own reality, but you have to be the one willing to take those steps to make it a reality. So that would be my biggest take. And I say that all in love. No condemnation, no criticism. This all in love.
Okay, well, thank you, Miss EB, for being here. It has truly been a pleasure. And I want to say thank you to my audience for joining. Before you do with Verlin, please go on my website, and that's verlintarleton.com. I have lots of freebies there, as well as a couples vision board template. The purpose of this podcast is to help prepare 1 million women to be and stay happily married, one conversation at a time. Again, make sure you visit verlintarleton.com. And until the next time, may you experience extraordinary love. Bye for now.